Hey.
Bradley, I would love to start with you. You wore many hats as a co-writer, actor, producer, director. This question is for actor Bradley Cooper. So when you're portraying a character so iconic like Leonard Bernstein, who's been widely photographed and filmed, where do you begin in your portrayal? How do you balance finding the accuracy of the person and bringing also your own interpretation to it?
Yeah, that's a good.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a good question. For me, I realized that the voice is the key. That sort of seems to be the thing that can unlock a lot. But this one was different also because he is a real human being, and there is so much primary source material, and there was a way that he moved, and so you just start researching it, and then, but the voice, I would start working on the voice with a wonderful dialect coach, Tim Monick. But then it's hard to talk about just one hat because it just felt like one big thing, because I'm also talking to Maddie Libatique years ago about sort of the cinema of it all and how it's going to be realized cinematically. And then with Kazu, we started so early on. And Steve Morrow, the sound mixer, talking about how it's going to sound with Jason because we had done A Star Is Born together. And then Carey, where we started so early on. So it all feels like one thing, and Lenny is born out of that communal collective experience. That really is the way it feels. That in collaborating with all these people, Lenny starts to become erected into this entity that then I hope, then every morning when I'm going back I'm with Kazu before crew call, then I go behind the curtain to get changed, and I just make that leap of faith that Lenny's going to be there. But it really is just about working with all these other people and everybody with the same goal.
And, someone like Leonard Bernstein, you could have told the story a million different ways, but how did the story reveal itself to you to be primarily a story of love and this unique marriage?
I think that has to do with the idea of what could I possibly bring to telling the story. And in researching it, because he's, first of all, the most dynamic, charismatic individual, and there's so much primary source material that you can make like a Senna-like documentary, and everything, his trip to Israel in '67, so many things, so many wonderful documentaries have been made, that it felt like, what sort of exploration could we make into the person that maybe is not ostensibly there in those documentaries, and in researching this relationship between these two. And also, I love working with other actors, and so I thought, to make a love story between two people and have Carey Mulligan, then it became very exciting as a filmmaker, and that just felt like, again, the tether for a movie to be told where we could learn also about his gift and his of what he gave us musically, because the whole movie is structured to his music. So you're being washed over his talent the entire film, and then at the end, when you see real Leonard Bernstein, it says music by, hopefully, you're actually not seeing this sort of mythological figure, but a person that you've gotten to know over the last 2 hours and 12 minutes. That was the goal. Does that make sense?
And Carey, I would love to bring you in. I admit I wasn't as familiar with Felicia prior to watching Maestro, but I fell in love with her through your performance, your interpretation of her. Her career isn't blossom parallel to Bernstein's maybe, but she was a powerful woman, a woman in her own right, a talented person. So how did you tap into that complex character who was both very talented in a loving relationship, but also had to sacrifice a lot from herself?
Yeah, I mean, hello? Hi. I think that was what was so fascinating to me about her. I mean, so many things. I fell in love with her voice. I found her, we had these incredible recordings of them speaking, of being interviewed, that John Gruen made on holiday in Ansodonia with them. And it was the two of them being interviewed, primarily Lenny, but there was an interview with Felicia, and there was also a recording of them all at dinner, talking and telling the story of the night they got, the night before they got married. And I just loved the way that she spoke. I loved her sense of humor. I loved how wry she was, and how, she kept a very close circle. She was one of those people that didn't didn't have tons and tons of friends. She was very selective about who was in her life. She was very selective about most things, and she really selected Lenny. You know, there was a real choice that was made, and that was clear from the beginning that this wasn't something she was going into blindly. She went into it, you know, with her eyes wide open. And in that time, I found that so, you know, courageous that she'd made this decision, this choice. And I think, you know, that's what marriage ultimately is choice. And I thought, what an amazing decision that she made, and that she made every day, regardless of what, you know, transpired within their lives. But I just found, their dedication to one another so romantic, and I think in terms of her sacrifice, you know, she in one of these interviews that we listened to, she said, he never asked me to give up anything, I just did it. And I think that was the heart of it, is that actually she could have done whatever she wanted to, and he would have supported her and encouraged her as an artist, but she made at some point, consciously or not, a decision to take a back foot and to you know, make his career and his artistic contribution her artistic contribution. And then there's the struggle of that. I was just so interested.
I love the scene, or I should say scenes, where Felicia and Lenny are sitting back to back and finding this strong, powerful connection between the two of them. I'm wondering, what was the off-screen version of you two finding that connection as Bradley and Carey becoming these characters? I know you were friends before, but how did you collaborate in becoming Lenny and Felicia so believably and powerfully?
I mean,
A question for both of you.
We do Q&As now, and one of us was going, I think, well, we had we did have we knew each other, but we weren't close friends, but we did know each other. And we also, Bradley asked me to do this in 2018, so and I said yes in 2018, so we had that amount of time. We did, and over those years, we had experiences together. We went to Philadelphia, we narrated Candide together in 2019. We did these tests with this whole crew in 2020 in COVID. We did camera tests in LA where we started putting these scenes that Bradley and Josh had written on their feet and trying out, you know, all the different elements of the makeup and the costume and the sound and everything. And the cinematography, and so we as a crew had spent so much time together by the time we got shooting. And then in the months before, Bradley and I had an opportunity to work together really closely, because I moved, you know, to New York to do the film with my family, and we were all there for a couple of months before we started shooting, and that was the time I think that we really, figured them out. Well, it got as close as we could to that.
I mean, I would just to add to that, it's the sort of the magical thing about when you embark on a creative endeavor with other people that are open and willing, and you become very close very fast if you're working from that place, in my experience. And so we were able, you know, Carey just gave all of herself to this film, as did everybody else in this stage, and everybody else in the crew. There really wasn't anybody that wasn't completely invested, and that energy and that abandon. With fearless abandon, we all just got close. And there's also something to be said when you're inhabiting real people, there's a sense of responsibility, and the children were such a massive part of this experience, and we were interacting with them all the time. So I know that brought Carey and I together in a huge way, because we had this responsibility to them.
And Matthew, I would love to bring you in next. Watching Maestro so beautifully shot, to me at least, was almost journeying in a couple of hours through cinema history, because you toggle between black and white and color, different aspect ratios and different techniques. 1 minute I feel like I'm watching a screwball movie, the next I'm in the 70s. So there's definitely a lot of that flavor that you bring. So maybe tell us a little bit about conceiving these varied journey throughout Maestro and working with Bradley Cooper to find the language of the film visually.
Well, it starts with Bradley, to be honest with you. It's just our conversations are the impetus for everything that is on the film. And it's just a constant effort to try to make every moment better. You know, that's something that we learn on A Star Is Born, or it just happened to us together on A Star Is Born, and it's what happened to us on this. But from a technical standpoint, it's like the scenes that we shot in the test that Carey was alluding to, those things informed us. You know, the more we can get things on their feet, the more we learned what the movie wanted to be. And we would just learn from the things we were doing, and we would proceed. And we would, you know, you can come in thinking you're gonna do 5 shots that day and it ended up being 1. Because we were just responding to the moment, and we're responding to the performances, and as a collective, it was just everybody was sensitive to it.
And there is a shot that I would like to ask about specifically, because we were just talking about, you know, how Felicia was an artist in her own right, but didn't necessarily blossom in her career. There's a shot earlier in the movie where Leonard is conducting and his shadow is casting over Felicia. It's a beautiful shot and it's very purposely done. So tell us about conceiving that.
Well, it was Bradley's idea to come up with that. You know, there's a lot of things that happen with Felicia and the wings. And Bradley had the idea of having this, you know, we actually shot a test of this, but the shadow was probably 1/4 the size that it was in the movie. We got better at it, I guess is what I'm saying. But the, you know, that idea was just, again, it was telling the story. You know, this man, his shadow, and this woman waiting in the wings for him and watching him perform. And you could feel the love and dedication of the 2 people. But Lenny couldn't help but be Lenny. You know, Lenny was unapologetically Lenny. And to me, that shot is Lenny being unapologetically Lenny, you know. And Felicia just visibly accepting who he is.
And Bradley, you want to ask?
No, I'm just kidding. My memory of that day is a sort of microcosm of that reflects what the experience was, because all of us just not relenting until we got exactly the position, which meant so many specific things about where the curtain was, how far away the wall was. We kept lifting the crane up, and it was just it was a wonderful day because we just didn't stop until we were able to really tell the story through that composition the way we could, and her patience to be there for that too.
Well, there are a lot of technical things going on in the shot.
Oh my gosh.
So I mean, I like to gloss over those things because they're painful.
Well, it looked beautiful. And Kazu, I want to bring you in next. I think I heard you say this in your film festival, that when you were 19, you watched a documentary about Leonard Bernstein, and not only you were really taken by the music, but you were also taken by his face, and you were inspired by it. So how did you bring that inspiration from when you were 19 to this massive project?
Well, yes. So, you know, the how I was inspired by his work was that, you know, when I just started the makeup as a hobby, that was a year before I started to work in the industry. And, you know, every time I sculpt a face, I look, you know, I go to buy portrait books. And I found that every major portrait book, I found his picture in it. And the way he posed, I could tell he's not just a behind the scene guy. You know, he knew how to pose, and the clothing was very beautiful too. And he had that iconic look and expression too. So I was wondering, who is this guy? And then I watched the documentary on Japanese TV, like when he visited Japan to teach a student in Hokkaido. And they were doing a rehearsal, and he was talking about basically like it's very hard to be a best musician. And it's very easy to be a mediocre musician. And the difference is like night and day. And it takes, you know, it's true. You know, that's why we are here. And it's you know, he was talking about how hard that is, and it takes a lot of dedication and commitment. And so that really inspired me to work much harder, and I still carry that with me. And because it's, you know, that was the beginning of inspiration I got. And so that moment I saw, oh, someday I want to recreate this guy in a movie, because, you know, I was so inspired by it.
And then the day came, and you did recreate them in a movie. So give us a little bit taste of what your daily routine was like. I think you were the first person that Bradley had to see really early in the morning. How did you approach the makeup between the younger Bernstein versus the older Bernstein?
Yeah, it was great. You know, like you know, I sometimes think back why this project was so special. It was because of Bradley. Because like I felt like after I finished this show, I felt like I went to like a best school, and I felt like I be educated by him. How it's about everything, like how to work on set and how to be better. Because we are always chasing perfection every day, and so that was such a great experience, and it was really inspired by Bradley. Like every time I finished the makeup, he and then he went to Lori McCordell who put the wig on, and he changed the costume, and by the time he shows up behind the curtain, he was ready. And so I was usually like when I look at my work, I feel like, oh, okay, what should I change? Like I keep looking at it. But the presence of him and Lenny in it, it really, I was like kind of memorized every day because I was so excited about it.
And I would like to bring in, sorry, Jason and Steve next. I think I want to start talking about this amazing sequence at Ely Cathedral that's, really conducted by you and recorded live on set, which is extremely challenging and unusual. And I think Star is Born was done in a similar way. How did you carry that idea over to this movie? And tell us about the unique challenges and opportunities you saw in creating that wonderful sequence.
I mean, I think this was, we took everything we learned on Star is Born, and I think we just pushed it to the max as far as, number of players, musicians. I think it was more challenging because now you're trying to recreate Lenny's music and trying to stay true to, I mean, there's so much in the repertoire from bowings on sheet music and things that were so specific to Lenny's conducting and like how do we stay true to that? So it was just kind of a deeper dive of what we did on Star. And I mean, I gotta be honest, people will ask me like, what's it like to work with Bradley? It's like all my colleagues. And I think the way I describe it, it's very different than any director I work with. It's like Bradley's like this huge creative mentor, like where he just keeps, it's interesting that he took on Lenny because there's like a teaching mentor aspect, which Lenny's known for, right? So it kind of, it was very parallel in that sense where you keep pushing for something greater and there's times you're insecure, like, I don't know, you can pull this off, like you're like, this is getting kind of deep, but there's a trust and there's a risk and there's things that I think you learn from any phase of the process over 2 movies where I think it really sort of helps elevate every nuance, definitely in sound and music and obviously with everything else.
It was always in striving to be as authentic as you could in the experience of being able to watch the movie. On the technical level, sure, it's really hard and not an easy feat, but that wasn't the goal. Let's see if we can do this because it's technically hard. It's more or less like, on A Star is Born, the live vocals really lent to the believability of every part of that movie. And if we could do that with the music, as opposed to everybody watching something that's just playback and we're pretending to do it, it was more or less just keeping everybody in the story, to keep everybody feeling that it was as real as it was because it was real. And it's hard to recreate that when you're kind of faking parts of it or not. So that was always the goal, is to keep, there's always Bradley's point of view was, what's the most authentic moment. Like Maddie had said, we'd go in for a shot where it'd be 5 shots for the day, and then he'd have it in the first wide and go, that's it. We don't need any more than that because that tells the story in the most authentic way you can. And I think that's always what he strives for in any of the technical departments. It's not about how kind of neat or cool or something interesting. It's more about how real it'll be and how it'll keep the audience captivated and keep us in the story.
And on the sound note, I'm remembering another scene. It's a party scene in the coda that it feels just so dynamic. The sound feels so dynamic. I feel like I was in the party and then you're really immersed and surrounded by it. how did you conceive that from a sound perspective?
Yeah, I mean, Bradley, you know, and sticking with the same idea of just keeping it authentic, you know, we've all been to parties where you have to talk over people. And then when we film a movie, typically you say, okay, everybody be quiet and just have the actors say their lines and pretend it's loud. And then, you know, you do loop group later to put some crowd noise in. And it always feels a little, it's always difficult to pull that off in a realistic way. You know, Bradley and I talked about a movie we had done, or I had done previously called The Front Runner, and we had everybody talking all the time, everybody overlapping. It didn't matter, but the way you achieve it is you mic everybody. And he said, let's do that on this movie, but only crank it up, you know. So for those party scenes, we had everybody talk, and if you needed to speak up over the other person at the party, speak up over the person at the party.
And I want to go back to, I can't stop talking about the Elite Cathedral scene because it's one of the greatest sequences of this year as far as I'm concerned. You're conducting, you've done your own conducting, and then you studied it with a famous conductor, Yannick Nézet-Séguin. What was that process like, learning to conduct like Bernstein, and what was the Elite Cathedral sequence like for you, of shooting it? What did it mean for you?
And the goal was, because that scene in the film, to Stephen's point, everything is always the story. That the attempt there is for you to really understand the joy that he had for what he was doing. And because we were doing it, now clearly the London Symphony Orchestra did not need me there to do anything.
But he did an ovation after.
That's it. But because of the lens and because of the shot, when I would study, I was so lucky that the New York Phil and Los Angeles and Philadelphia allowed me to go to so many rehearsals, and I traveled with Gustavo Dudamel, who also helped teach me. We went to Berlin, and I was with him for 2 weeks for Mahler's Second, from the first rehearsal all the way to the final performance. And so the thing that I am always sort of enraptured by is just seeing how it almost looks like a sound wave when the conductor is working with an orchestra, and almost you can see the way, you can see it when there's that communal element going, when there's that exchange that's happening, that there's real communication. It's very evident, and when it's not there, when you go to the orchestra, it's also very evident, and it happens. So I wanted to make certain that was what we were able to achieve, and have it be filled with joy, because that's the way Lenny conducted. And it was an infectious joy, and with such abandon that he got ridiculed for in reviews for decades. And then he was praised by it. I mean, he had such an unorthodox approach to art. And I really believe that is what we all took from Lenny on this project. We all just said, look who we're making a story about. If we don't approach it in the same way, we don't have a chance in hell of getting anywhere near this. So that's what that was about. And I just worked so hard. And Yannick had such a great sense of Lenny also. But again, it wasn't ever to mimic that performance that you could see on YouTube. It was about, how can I inhabit that joy in a real way while also us recording it live, and that's why it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying.
Yes, it was.
I agree. And we only got it right once, and that's what's in the movie.
One of my favorite things about that sequence has to do with you, Carey. There's this look on your face that I feel like a lifetime of love and acceptance and sacrifice and support is coming full circle on your face. I'm wondering how you tap into that as an actor. I know this is a very abstract question, but I absolutely love the expression that you have watching Lenny
too.
on the sideline. Incredible. Just a beautiful piece of performance.
I don't know. I don't know. I'd love to come up with some cool answer, but I don't think I thought about anything. I think I was just watching Lenny. Do you know what I mean? Like, that was one of the last things we shot in the whole movie. So we'd lived the whole, 30 years of their relationship together by that point. So I think very early on in this film, unlike almost everything I've ever done, I stopped thinking, from when I was acting with with Bradley when he was learning. I didn't have to think, what does this scene mean, or how do I feel? It was just, well, there was no thinking. It was just. So I don't think I thought it. That's a really good answer. I just don't think I was thinking. I think I was just, watching.
And we all benefited from that because we felt like the crew, all of us felt like we watched a young woman in her early 20s, and then we watched her age, and we watched her get sick, and it wasn't like we were watching an actor make choices. I didn't feel that ever. We lived through this person's life in 55 days, and that's all due to her talent, this immense talent that Carey has of just giving over and being
Next, I want to ask the two of you another, I think, memorable scene that we all think about, the Thanksgiving scene, where I think that's a turning point in our understanding of Felicia, at least. What can you tell us about the day you shot this? How did you conceive that dialogue together? How did you prep for it?
Well, luckily, that was one of the first things that we wrote in around 2018, and that was one of the scenes that we used to test makeup and lenses and how we were going to shoot it and all of these things, wardrobe. So we had that in our bodies for many years, and there was a tall order. I didn't know if we were going to pull it off, but luckily she drives the scene and she was able to. The dream was to stay in the wide so that for the joke, quite honestly, so that the punchline would work, because it's never going to be as funny as you go into close-ups, come back out to the wide, and then Snoopy comes. At least if I was watching, I was like, oh, that's why they went to the wide, for the punchline. But I didn't know that we would be able to do that. So Maddie and I, we were ready, and we learned that in the test. We were ready to do two simultaneous long lens close-up shots, dirty overs, but on the third take, because again of this incredible actor, we got it, and we didn't need to do anything. And because we were able to be so bold, don't you think, Maddie, cinematically, because of her? It's just true. I mean, we were able to do things that we never would have been able to do if it wasn't this caliber of a talent. That we can create most things were very specific. We would spend hours setting everything up and then invite people in to inhabit that very specific space. But if they don't inhabit it, we can't live in that space. We're going to have to figure something else out. And because of this talent, it really, I think, propelled us to be even more bold as the movie went on. That we knew that we could do, lay down track all the way to her and have her receive her guests when she was ill. And I went around for coverage, but knowing that, and I even said this to you, this is it. Remember, I said that this is going to be the scene, us just pushing into you the entire time. That's the most thrilling thing possible when you have these tools of cinema at your disposal, when you have this actor like this.
Would you like to add something to the Thanksgiving scene, the camera placement that Bradley was talking about? Especially was purposeful in that moment.
I sat at the camera for that one, and we were in a doorway because we couldn't get quite wide enough, and I felt like I shouldn't have been there watching the performance. I felt like I was intruding, but I knew there was something going on. Of course, my mind's like, are we gonna cover this? We're gonna be able to cover this. In my experience, it's gonna be impossible. Bradley, he had it, we had it, and we talked about it. We actually took a finder after that, tried to line up Felicia's coverage, and he just turned to me and said, no, hand me the lens.
Yeah, we all went home early that day. That's what I remember.
But I mean, I don't know. The inspiration was that when I was a kid and my parents would fight, I would be upstairs with my sister, and they would be in the living room, and it was exactly that sort of left to right looking at them, and I felt very unsafe. But so I always felt like if we were inside of them and we were like a close-up of them, then we would be placing you in the middle, and then my feeling is that I would be reminded that it's a movie, and that actually being away and having that feeling that Maddie had at the camera hopefully provoked in you this feeling of that unsafe and not really knowing what it's going to be. That was the hope. That makes sense.
But can I just say one more thing about that? What there were so many times where this happened. I mean, this happened every day on the film, but Bradley would be simultaneously performing as Lenny, directing, but also thinking through the bigger picture of the film. And sometimes that would mean that in between takes, he'd do that thing where he'd just close his eyes and not talk. And you'd be like, huh? And there'd just be silence. But we'd all just stand around and be like, huh? What's going to happen? It'd be like that. And then he'd run through the whole film in his head, and then he'd start talking again. But he was also able to do that mid-take. So in the Thanksgiving Day fight, that third take, we got to the end of it, and we had reached the climax, and I'd said this awful thing to him, and he had tears in his eyes, and he looked like I just stabbed him. And in that moment, whilst he was doing that, he was also thinking, and then there was no more lines, so I was like, oh, the scene's over, I don't know what to do. So I just stood there. And in that moment, he went, okay, so now we're gonna hear the kids at the door, they're not there, but I'm gonna hear them. We'll put that in later, and then I'm gonna wait, and then we'll respond to the kids, and then in that moment, this Snoopy that is digitally going to be added in like 9 months is gonna go past the window, and then the scene is over. And he thought all of that just in the, and I just, like, how your brain can operate on that many levels whilst being Lenny with tears in his eyes because he's been so badly wounded by, Felicia. It's just.
I also have to say on the scene that you're in the doctor's office finding out you have cancer and you guys embrace, he's directing the camera to come closer, off, while he's hugging, and I just thought this is like mind blowing.
This is me. I'm going like this to the guys, and then he's like this. So then I'm like.
I didn't know any of this. I was just very sad.
This is happening all the time.
Yeah. You reach off camera and start grabbing mango and pulling them closer. It's all like great.
It is funny. It's like, that scene, we were shooting it from one side of it, if you remember.
Of course.
And then it was wrong. We wanted to flip it, so we had to remove a wall.
Yeah,
Meanwhile, you're walking around. What's happening? What are we gonna do? And then we wait. Everybody's patient. We get it done. Many times it's so important for us to work at a pace because we have to make their schedule. But we're working with this group. I never felt that. If something had to change to make it better so that we can accomplish the scene the right way, we took the time to do it.
Nice.
And it paid off because we wouldn't have to shoot all day. We just got what we needed.
And
we're all in tune.
And to that extent, with that scene, we shot from there, it wasn't working. And then we built the floor, and then we had the one shot, we designed it. And then, but we also knew that the rhythm had changed, and we had to go back. And then she sat there waiting for the doctor, for me to come in, and then the doctor. It was we had a 1,000-foot mag because we were on the doll. We were on a dolly on tracks, right? Or no, we laid down the floor so we didn't have to.
Well, the second time.
Yeah, but there was 9.5 minutes. So there's like the beginning of that scene is her waiting for like 4 minutes, just waiting there, and that piece of acting alone is insane. Did you remember that?
Yeah, it's not in the film, but yeah.
but just her there, not saying, guys, what's going on? You know what I mean? Like, is something wrong? You just stayed in it.
Yeah, there was a lot of times when we were filming where it was just devastating to watch both of you, just behind the camera, just the week it's a week of her dying.
Oh, yeah, that was
like the crew was just destroyed all week. Walking around, moping around that we didn't watch. It was rough because it was so visceral, so believable, and everybody was there for that reason. That was just so successful.
The experience of watching really closely mimic that. I got the 5-minute warning a while ago, but I want to ask one last question. I know that the Bernstein kids, Jamie, Nina, and Alex, were closely involved in this, and they were following the production. I'm wondering, when you were working with them, what was one of the most memorable things they told you about their parents that you kind of kept with you throughout the production? Maybe some insight that became your guiding light, if there is such a thing that you remember.
Well, we had the opportunity of interviewing so many people that knew Lenny and Felicia that my memory is not really of anything that they said, but actually the way they move and talk and their energy, you can really feel their parents in all three of them, because there's a synergy that they all have. They call themselves the three-headed monster. That's how they self-identify. And that says a lot. And they just have this way of walking through life that it feels to me the closest I could ever get to them, their parents. And so that just through the process of being around them in the same physical environment, or even receiving text from them. And one of my favorite things is our WhatsApp chain that we're all on, and it really feels like we're able to like put our hands into the past and feel their parents, and that is something you can never. That's invaluable.
Carey?
Yeah, I'd say the same. I say, they were just unbelievably generous and so warm, and to play someone's parent. They lost Felicia in such a sort of awful, tragic, much too early way. I was very daunted and wanted to attempt to do justice to who she was, but they just could not have been kinder and more loving. Really loving from the beginning. And they also one thing, a physical thing that I did have is they before we started shooting, they gave me her lighter, her cigarette lighter, which is engraved with her name on the bottom, and I still have it now. I still have it. And I used it in the film, so from when the film turns to colour and it's engraved with her married name on the bottom, that's the lighter that I have the whole way through the film. So it's very precious to me.
I can ask you another million questions, but I think we're going to have to end. Thank you so much.
Thank you for doing it.
Thank you.